welcome to Never Seen a Film Club, the film club where we watch films that you've never seen. I'm Accidental Theatre's Emma Bainbridge, and joining me as always is my very dapper, debonair, very pink co-host, Robert J. Simpson from City Punked. And this week we are discussing Strictly Ballroom. It is Baz Luhrmann's 1992 debut.
Samba! He had the world at his feet.
Come on, number 100!
He had the moves.
Flashy, crowd-pleasing steps.
He had the magic.
I keep asking myself why. Did I fail him as a mother?
He had the music.
The pogo.
Rudy Rama.
Tango, please.
The one thing he needed was a partner.
Stay calm, Liz. Stay calm.
Piss off, Liz.
I'm not dancing with you till you dance like you're supposed to.
I thought that what they danced was wonderful.
Hi, Liz, I thought you should work. That was unexpected.
I am probably the worst person to talk about this from a never seen it point of view, because I have seen Strictly Ballroom a lot. An awful lot, because I was a massive fan of Baz Luhrmann as a teenager. And he was like my film auteur idol for a long time. So I've seen Strictly Ballroom probably close to about 60 or 70 times. So
that's too many times. Once or twice is cool, but 80 or 90 times, man?
What are you, from the department of Norm Sands?
Yeah. But how about you? How many times have you seen Strictly Ballroom, Robert?
Not that many. I
fair.
have a vague feeling that I may have seen it once before, possibly in the 90s, but I didn't remember it sufficiently for it to feel like I was repeating myself. Mm-hmm. So if I have seen it, it was once a long time ago. So I'm going to argue that it was once today.
That's fair.
About 4 hours ago.
Well, as someone who has not got their long, laborious history as I do, what did you think?
It was a lot of fun, actually. What I liked about it, as I knock every microphone and other utensil in front of me, what I liked about it, I guess, was its irreverence and its sense of humour, and also the fact that actually the cast is full of people that look like real people. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I think of Baz Luhrmann films, there's a lot of beautiful people in Baz Luhrmann films. With the occasional, I mean, if you've just seen Elvis, which arguably Colonel Tom's a bit of a kind of unpleasant character in terms of appearances and stuff, but like the people, the actors in Strictly Ballroom they lived in. They look like real people. They look. Yep. I mean, I felt in many ways it felt quite British. Actually,
completely.
As a comedy,
that. Yeah, it's very kitchen sink, like grubby, like floors looking normal is what I always look for in its walls and floors. So if I'm in a place, if in a cinema, and with big budget Hollywood, even when it's supposed to be like a crack den, it's always spotlessly clean. Whereas, as you said, this feels like a world that's very much occupied by the characters and its inhabitants.
Yeah.
Fun fact, maybe not fun, but it is a fact.
You're right. It's fact.
A lot of the cast aren't actors. They're actually ballroom dancers from the amateur circuit in Australia, which I think definitely adds. So they've all occupied that world outside of it as a kind of as a space. They've existed in it in the real world, whatever that means, because who's to argue what's real and what's not?
There are those who say that life is an illusion and that reality is simply a figment of the imagination.
But I just like how the family dynamic doesn't just throw through, the mum, the dad, and Scott Hastings, son and daughter. It feels very much like a community that has been kind of exposed. Like we're getting a little bit of a feeling of what it's like to exist in that world. Because if you look carefully enough, there's all kinds of body shapes, there's all kinds of income level, there's all kinds of ethnicities if you look hard enough. I mean, you have to look pretty hard, I'm sorry about that. But it was 1992, and it's Australia. But I love it very much. And I think my favourite part of the world that has been built is that it's world that Baz Luhrmann came from. His parents owned a dance studio. He was his self-insert character is Scott Hastings to a certain extent, where he's like this debonair, like ballroom dancing type, but actually that glamour is only for the weekends. And I love that you get those little peeks behind that glittery curtain into the real lives, where, you know, there's two blokes who are on the dance floor, they're Fred Astaire, but in real life they're just two guys who work at a car wash. And it's very unglamorous, and it's like hot and gross and sticky Australia, but for that hour or 2 hours a week that they get to be in the dance studio, they are heroes in superhero costumes. I really like that.
I guess, you know, I mean, it feels to me like it's a film that still has a lot of relevancy in terms of that world, in terms of, I suppose, effectively in terms of fandoms of all kinds, but also in terms of that kind of showmanship. I mean, we have got a lot of this now. I mean, the Strictly Come Dancing, which is on the BBC these days, is and its other variations across the world, obviously tap into that world and give us a side of it, but it's all the glitz and glam, and also because they now use celebrities exclusively. But I think, you know, in its day, I mean, when this came out, this is 1992. At that point, in the UK at least, Come Dancing, the very popular TV series that many of us won't remember, the original precursor to Strictly Come Dancing, that had been running for, 50, 60 years, something.
Yeah,
a huge amount of time, decades, and would have been something that people would identify with. And that, I think, when I possibly encountered this the first time, this is where it sort of rings a little bit of a bell for me. That was still a world that I was aware of. You know, it's all the dancing at the Blackpool Tower. I'd been to see those dancers back in the day. And it's a different kind of grubbier kind of setting, surroundings, you know, once you get outside the performance space.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about this. I like that kind of, I just like seeing working class people doing stuff.
Exactly that. I really like the juxtaposition of having something so glamorous in just such a normal space. Like, my favorite part of the opening sequence is how you get to see these beautiful, gorgeous, rich costumes and these fantastic moves that these dancers are doing, and then the shot pulls out and it's a church hall. That's essentially what it is. It's run down, because that's the environment ballroom dancing happens in, because it's a niche interest. But yeah, the working class element for me makes it that little bit more interesting, because I don't know how many of us have had to sit through a Hollywood, I say Hollywood, I mean, what is it? But sat through a dance film where it's like very prim and proper world. It's always a ballet dancer who wants to become a street dancer, or a street dancer who wants to become a ballet dancer. It's from this, like, there's always that perspective. And there's not, for me, those types of films, there's not an awful lot of joy, whereas this one feels very joyous, and it's just working class people finding something that they love and doing it well. And doing it, again, I think the fact that it's the amateur Pan Pacific Grand Prix, it's not the professional Grand Prix. Like, they are hobbyists. This is what they do. They're not the best dancers in the world, and they know that. And that's not the point. The point is for the, as I said, for the couple of hours a week, they get to feel removed from the existence that they have to occupy, being probably low-income, working-class Australians in a time where Australia's economy wasn't great. Sort of the tail end of the 80s and the early 90s, I think Australia was very much like the UK in that fact, where, you know, hustler and bustles over in Sydney were doing fantastic, but like working class stiffs, it wasn't great. It was fine, but it wasn't an amazing time to exist in Australia.
I think interestingly, we get very little glimpse into the world of the characters outside the ballroom as well. I mean, there's a little bit the love interest we see, you know, the family shop, I guess, that they run. With its fish and chips and everything else.
Bits and pieces.
We're aware that his dad's essentially a cleaner. That's what he does. But we don't really see much. Oh, and there's then obviously Ken, isn't it, with the kind of the hot tub business.
Yes.
But beyond that, I mean, and those are fleeting little examples. It's like, you know, we get told that that's what they do, but there's nothing else. This isn't. It's almost like they don't exist outside the dance. Like, that's what they live for, that whole world, and that's where they come alive and they become real people. and all their drama is played out on the dance floor. You know, we've got a character who's an alcoholic, basically, and we actually don't see him really drinking. There's one bit where he's drinking from a flask in the dance room, but that's all within that space. We're not kind of getting those kind of background insights. We're not being taken outside that space. We're just completely immersed in their world for that time. Which is odd, because I think the temptation would be, if you were doing that now, if you were doing it as a serious film, which thankfully this isn't, you would have to see that kind of rags to riches. You would have to see all those foibles manifest in great detail and great grim misery in order for us to feel the joy and the elation of what it is that they do. But ultimately, the only thing that they really care about is that little prize. And actually, our lead character doesn't even care about the prize.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's just about expression.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's nice is that, as you've pointed out, if this was a drama, or probably made more contemporary, it would be very much be about the rising up out of that their situation. Whereas in Strictly Ballroom, I think the message is that you're not defined by your situation. You define yourself how you want to be defined. So if you are an artist of any means, shape or form in your head, why can't you have grand visions? And why can't, I don't know, the Belfast like colouring in competition be your be all and end all? If that's what you love to do, then why is that something to be ashamed of? Why are you defined by your 9 to 5? I think, talking of it from a contemporary point of view, I think what's really interesting is, like, you find a lot of discussion now about working a job but not finding a career, which is the new direction that people tend to be doing, which is where you get a lot of these people who live in like tiny vans and like work around the world and they travel a lot. They're coders and customer service reps. They don't care about what they're doing from a kind of career point of view. What they care about is their quality of life outside of that. And they're willing to sacrifice, job satisfaction for life satisfaction, which is a really interesting perspective. And I think that if you took Strictly Ballroom and contemporized it, I don't think you'd be able to ignore that. So it would be very much, I think you'd see the grinding of everybody and like all these like horrible things that, we as a society have done to each other, and just like coping mechanisms and stuff would be completely used to define characters. Whereas in this, it's who they are on the dance floor. That's who they are. And I really enjoyed that kind of aspect of it. Just like the fact it's a story about people being people. There's no great like message in it. It's not like, yes, there's a Romeo and a Juliet sort of story. There's a Beauty and the Beast story if you want to go that direction and say Fran's the Beast, but that would be rude and mean because she's not. She's a very lovely lady and looks aren't everything at the start. Her journey is certainly one of my more interesting ones, but it's just a lovely look into a world that we don't occupy. I think for me anyway, unless you're...
Well, you don't think there's a message within the film?
No, I don't think I wouldn't say there's no message within the film. I would say there's no far-reaching, greater good sort of outstretch. It's not look at these people pull themselves out of this situation by their bootstraps. This is look at these people enjoying the life that they have, not that the life that they want, like have been thrown into.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, for me, maybe this is a film that's actually for anyone who's got a creative bone in their body. What it seems to me to be doing is sort of saying, look, no matter what you do, no matter what you create, there's always going to be people who have rules, who will want you to perform a certain way. There'll be people trying to influence every decision you ever make in order for you to fit the box that you're meant to fit. And, if you have any sense of wanting to do something else, something that people kind of frown upon, that you should pursue it. Because, ultimately it's what his father tells him to do. Is that the secret is that actually he spent his whole life regretting not actually trying to do the things that he knew in his heart that he should be doing, the things that kind of excited him, the things that were not following the Strictly Ballroom rules. And so, whenever our protagonist is kind of put into that situation, there's a real tension there between what he impulsively feels, that kind of energy, that kind of excitement, that kind of creating something new, and everybody else around him kind of going, you don't want to do that. That's not how it's done. We've done it like this for like ever, and you must stay doing it like this forever. And I guess that excites me as a creator, and I know what it's like. I mean, I'm not saying that my stuff's good, but you know, I know what it's like for somebody to come around and say, well, you can't do that because that's not how we do it.
Blue.
Green is not a creative colour.
I was going to say, tell me that you spent any time in the Northern Ireland arts sector without telling me that you've lived in... You're not doing a colloquial play about the Troubles. What are you doing with your life, Robert? Sorry, that was very bitter.
You're fired!
Sorry, that was very bitter.
Well, it's bitter, but it's also true, and I'm sure it's true of other other places too. You know, there's always somebody gatekeeping what we do and trying to dictate who it is we should talk to, what it is that we should perform, who it is that we should perform with. And I think that that's something that's important to kind of push beyond. I mean, I constantly come back down to the David Bowie thing. I've quoted it to other people endlessly. I've had it quoted to me this week as well, but there's a lovely little clip where he's talking about being an artist and just pushing yourself further and further into the water.
The other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth, and when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting.
Just to go slightly out beyond your depth, and once you kind of can't quite feel the bottom anymore, when it starts to be slightly uncomfortable, that's the point where you're most alive. And that's basically what he's doing. He's pushing himself. What he's doing isn't that revolutionary. He's introducing a few new steps that the crowd love.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the other thing that I find bizarre is like, as an artist, as a creator, you really want to have engagement with your audience. We want you to kind of like sit and talk to us and kind of feedback and get excited about what we do so we can collectively create something new. And that's what he's basically doing. He's doing stuff that excites the audience, that gets them more interested, that moves them from being passive observers into active participants in the work that's being created. And all around him, everybody else is going, no, we don't want that. They're literally gatekeeping and trying to lock it all down. And that, I guess, is where I think the message of the film really is. I've suddenly got very animated and excited about this as I have a mini revelation in my own self. But that I think is what it's about. And I think for any of us involved in the arts, it's hard not to take away something from that. If you manage to watch this film and get nothing from it, you're soulless.
Yeah.
And you just live in Hades forever.
This is hell. It looks a lot like Margate.
Yeah. And also, can we talk about the name Tina Sparkles? Talk about drag.
Sounds like a porn name.
It does.
Of some sort.
Australian drag. It's great.
It's yeah. I mean, it's well. I mean, if you're going to go down that way, I mean, the big rivals are number 69. I mean, like there are some very obvious
puns, jokes.
Puns that you know that I think work quite well. I mean, they're subtle. It's not in your face.
Yeah.
But it's there, and there's obviously this underlying current and energy and campery that for me make the film really appealing. What I wish it had was a little more oomph.
Bit more pogo.
The Bogo Pogo. Bogo Pogo. It's the Bogo Pogo, Mr. Fife.
I think so. I think the soundtrack as well is just like, it's just ever so slightly subdued. Yeah. And it's the thing that Baz Luhrmann, I think, learnt. By the time he does Romeo and Juliet, he's learned how to kind of like ramp that up just enough and really engage with the emotional sense. And that's why when I first watched that as a teenager, like that film was just like, wow.
Yeah, it's very good.
This doesn't have the wow for me, but it's very good. And you know, it was a 4-star review on Letterboxd because I really enjoyed it. But it just didn't have quite the energy I think that he develops over his next couple of years.
Interesting. Okay. I will always love this film. It's one that I highly recommend to anyone. Anytime anyone says to me, I want something light but good, something that I can pop on and not have to think about too much and feel a bit better, there are 2 films I always recommend. Strictly Ballroom is one of them. The other one is Connie and Carla, which is a terrible film from like 2005, which stars Toni Collette, and she has to go on the run to hide from hitmen, and she is a cabaret singer, and she goes to San Francisco. They have to go undercover as drag queens, but they sing live and they bring dinner theatre back to San Francisco. Connie and Carla, look it up. It's terrible, but it's great. And Strictly Ballroom. I'm like, Strictly Ballroom is my go-to artistic choice for slightly camp, heartwarming, and not overly intellectual. I love it so much. It's great.
Yeah.
And it's definitely my favourite Baz Luhrmann film, which there's only 3 that I like, so it's top 1 of 3. But yeah, I could, if you haven't seen it and you didn't come to see it, watch it, because it's well worth it. And I think it's like $1.99 in most DVD stores, because for some reason it's always in CEX. I see it every time I go in. There's always like 18 copies of Strictly Ballroom, and I'm like,
at the time of recording this, it's on Amazon Prime. That's how I watched it today. So other streaming services are available.
Exactly. So you can go. You have no excuse now. Go and watch it and make yourself feel better about your day. But yeah, it's definitely on my list of keeps. I have a bit in my head. I have a very large list of keep and not keep, and it's definitely in there. And it's very safe. It's very in the middle, and it's locked away. But I love it. Well, that I think will end our discussion today. So thank you so much for joining me, Robert.
Pleasure as ever.
And where can people find you on the interwebs?
If you want to voluntarily cyberstalk me, you will find me at Avalard on Twitter, AVALARD, but you'll also find Cinepunked on most of the social media profiles. We are Cinepunked most places apart from Instagram, where we are Cinepunked Film. Check us out, and we do other stuff as well.
Awesome. And you can follow us at Accidental Theatre on everything except Twitter, where we're Accidental T. But we're not very active on there because Elon Musk is a vampire and we are not indulging his weird techniques at the moment. But we are on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. You can find us there. You can also find the Never Seen It Film Club YouTube on there as well. We'll link that below. Although if you're watching this, you're probably already on it, which is great. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for watching. My name's Emma from Accidental Theatre. This is Robert J. Simpson from Cinepunked, and we run Never Seen It Film Club, the film club where we watch films you've never seen. We'd really appreciate it if you could come and join in to our membership program, where you can come and see a lovely film in our beautiful book bar every month, and it costs just £3 a month, and it's amazing. The membership button should be right about here, so if you're just there, and if you can't join the membership, that's no problem, just like and subscribe to the channel.